Welcome to the In the Middle podcast, a podcast where we talk about every avenue of life because life really takes place in the middle, not the beginning, not the end. How do we navigate the middle?
Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to In the Middle with me and Dez. My name is Zorn. This is Dez.
I'm Dez.
We've got another guest today. I'm excited about our guest. I'm gonna have Dez kind of just explain his relationship and how he's got to know Lyle. But this is episode 3. So Dez, what's up?
All right. So what we said this season, we want to have a third person in the room.
Yeah.
Conversation.
Yeah.
It just so happened as we were going to have recording week for series 2, episode 3.
Yeah.
This is my friend Lyle. And
What's up, Lyle?
What's good?
How you doing, Lyle?
Man, I'm fantastic.
Lyle is my friend. We first met in the summer of 2022.
Yep.
Okay.
When I was having a sabbatical, and I went out for 12 days to DC.
Okay.
And Lyle was my pre-visit guy, throughout visit guy. I've been back since. We're now friends. And Lyle decided a number of months ago, hey, I want to come out here, wanted to come see me.
Yeah.
This is a whistle-stop 24-hour visit.
That's
I picked
it.
him up from the airport last night, return him tonight for a red-eye. He's here, and so we thought, gotta make the most of the opportunity.
Come on.
I love
To
it.
have somebody who
love
would
it.
normally not have the opportunity to talk about life in the middle, and I know Lyle has had stories
Short sprints.
to share throughout his life.
Let's
So
get
there you go.
Let's get into it.
Get
Let's
into
do
it.
So, Lyle, where are you from? How did you land in D.C.? You know, give me the backstory. Childhood a little bit.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, so I'm not from anywhere.
Okay.
I'm from everywhere. Kind of. My dad was in the Navy.
Okay.
And so grew up as a Navy kid. So traveling all over the world. My mother's from Antigua Island in the West Indies.
Wow.
And so so I mean we everywhere. The scar on my right eye is from when I was 3 years old living in the Philippines. I mean everywhere. So I really well traveled as a little kid. Yeah. And then I decided to join the United States Air Force right after I went to Florida State, played basketball there. There was just like a tug on me during summer camp there. I was like, okay, I can't do this. My brother's in the Air Force. He's getting out. My little brother is an absolute wild person, and he's just not doing right. So I'm like, okay, the only person that's going to act right is me. And my mother thinks I am absolutely a piece of crap anyway, so I got to do something to make my mama feel like the second child that she had, that was an absolute worst.
You skipped something already, though. I mean, you moving fast. Wait a second. You played at Florida State?
Yeah. So officially, I played basketball at Florida State. Yeah. So
how did you become good moving that much?
Well, I mean, there's gyms everywhere.
Okay, I guess it is.
Yeah, there's gyms everywhere. And you know, I mean, the international game is really, really getting up. But I played most of my ball in the United States.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna tell you honestly, that came from a lot of running away from people who wanted to beat me up. So I got fast real quick.
Okay.
And then I realized that I was actually, athletic, by dodging punches, from big old bullies that was trying to beat me up because I was always the new kid. I was always the new kid.
I was going to say, you always have to be auditioning for a team.
Right, yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Tryouts for a new team every year.
For a new team. Tryouts in, just going to English class, try not to be, and so because of that, I always had this audacious desire to best or one up the biggest person or the baddest person in the room on the court. I had a dude tell me, hey, listen, if you're the best, you have to prove it every single time you're anywhere in any space.
Yeah.
And so, especially in athletics, I would just look like, who is the best? Oh, well, that's the guy I want to guard, or that's the guy I want to go up against, because I needed to prove myself. I felt like I needed to prove myself in every area of my life, in childhood, to my dad, who was emotionally and physically abusive to me and my mom and my brothers. Wow. So I had to prove myself even as a young kid, and then prove myself all the way up to. So I mean, I didn't get scouted, y'all. I walked on.
Oh,
I walked on to Florida State.
That's even crazier.
But Charlie Ward did recruit me.
Okay.
So initially, I mean, football was my thing as a young kid.
Okay.
Playing quarterback. And so Randall Cunningham and Charlie Ward were my guys. Because they were the only people kind of doing it skillfully in the pocket, but as well as could take off and do their thing way back in the late 90s. So Charlie Ward actually recruited me. It is interesting when I walked onto Florida State and I let him know, like, hey, I'm walking on, I heard nothing back from Charlie. Nothing back, right? I went in the Air Force, told Charlie, like, hey, I'm going to Air Force. Nothing back. When I got saved, y'all, Charlie Ward. Charlie Ward's my guy. So it lets you know, obviously, Charlie Ward played at Florida State, won the Heisman Trophy at Florida State, and then everybody's like, man, bro, you should go pro in the NFL. And he's like, no, I'm going pro in the NBA, and became a New York Knick. And so, that's that whole story with him. But, I mean, low-key, not really low-key. I mean, he was super hot on campus and everywhere else. That he is a believer in Jesus. Man, this dude loves Jesus. So when I got on Twitter, it's like, hey, man, I got saved. Man, he blew me up on Twitter.
Oh, now he wants to speak up.
And so,
now
so
you know me.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just a wild ride. Just kind of doing a lot of those things, and so. Just a real underdog mentality my entire life.
Let me ask you this. Explain to me the transition. You're in sports, D1 school. I think Florida State's D1.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're transitioning from that to knowing you need to go to the Navy or what? Army?
Force.
Air Force.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was that? How many months did that take? What was that pruning season like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, there wasn't a big one. It wasn't a big pruning season for me because I grew up in the military community my entire life, right? This is my life. So going into the military is just like waking up in the morning for me. That wasn't, I mean, if anything, transitioning out of a space where you had the military community as your background and your foundation was the transition. Okay. Right, going onto a campus there at Tallahassee, finding housing and doing all these other things. I mean, all that stuff is provided for you in the military. You have somebody that like orders you to go over here, do this, go with these people, and live in that house. Where versus you going into this college arena and you're so the students that you guys are dealing with here at ASU. I understand that to a huger degree of the coming out of life being, kind of with your parents and then you on this campus kind of figuring things out on your own. That was the massive transition. If anything, going into the military out of Florida State, that was easy.
Can I ask you another question? Okay, sorry. I'm just very interested. This is awesome. If I were to ask this, and I'm just thinking about a couple of maybe friends that I have, just kind of walking through the middle, with you explaining that your dad was verbally and physically abusive to you and your mom, but then he was in the Army, it would seem like to me you'd want to run away from that because that would bring bad memories of that. So how did you walk through knowing that this was a right decision, knowing that it was like a very dark background behind the military or
let me double down on that.
Yeah.
Because he was also a minister.
Wow.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. He was a Christ follower. The only time my dad didn't stutter is when he preached. Yep. And so he would preach and then come off the pulpit, take us outside and bang my head across the back of across the back of a car. So yeah, I mean that's what I'm dealing with. So it was the military, it was Jesus, it was being a father, it was being a husband, all those things.
Yeah.
All those things are areas of where I was significantly scarred in my life. But my older brother went into the Air Force. So I went to go live with him in North Dakota.
So he was the first one to...
So he was the first one. So living with my brother in North Dakota, this is Arizona.
Yeah.
We in Arizona, man. It get hot, It does not get hot in Dakota. It gets really, 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 really cold.
I don't love cold.
And I tell you what, so I was there in the winter of '95. There was a massive snowstorm. If you look in history in North Dakota, and man, those guys were turning up in the middle of a snowstorm.
Yeah.
They were turning up, having all kinds of fun in the middle of like 10, 20 feet of snow. Yeah. I'm like, yo, that's like a 15, 16-year-old kid. I'm like, yo, if these guys can turn up like this in these kind of conditions, whoo, this Air Force thing may not be the worst thing in the world to do. And so that really shifted my paradigm from thinking from a military perspective to just like, okay, it's people and experiences and moments. And the Air Force helped to facilitate a shift when it came to my mindset, when it came to the military.
Whoa. So you said life is people.
Yeah.
And moments.
Yeah.
And experiences, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
No matter what season of life you're in, everything about a healthy life is people, moments, experiences.
Yeah.
And you had a childhood that wasn't a majorly positive one.
Right.
But you're driven because even the whole sports thing, you're driven and then I'm going to go do this.
Yes.
And you weren't driven by, I want to be in the military. You were driven by, I want to be in an environment where people and moments and experiences, I don't know.
Matter?
They matter, yeah. You knew they would happen.
Yeah.
Or,
and I will also say that it was familiar. It was still a very familiar space, you know, like, hey, if things don't work out, I know that I have what it takes to survive there. Right?
Yeah.
And I had met some I had met some real interesting people while I was in the military. So I don't mean to make a real super hard left turn here, but I think it goes along with the whole idea of people and moments and experiences. Because my first encounter with racism was while I was a kid in the military. But here's the thing. I did not walk out of that situation thinking I was in a racism moment. I had no idea, actually. I had no idea. It's only looking back at it 30 years later and realizing, snap, man.
Yeah.
that was my first direct, experience with racism. And so my boy David, we kicked it. We played basketball. It's funny, man. I got beat up by a bunch of black kids, and he came to pick me up and dust me off. Then he got me into like Led Zeppelin and Metallica and all that. I had no idea, man. I had no clue.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that is so awesome.
He was just a cool dude. He was just a cool dude, man. Wearing his leather jacket with the spikes on it, man. He was just a cool dude. And I liked baseball. He was really great at baseball. He would talk about his game Baseball Stars. I'm like, oh man, you couldn't see me at Baseball Stars. He's like, man, I would crush you with Baseball Stars. I'm like, no. And so I was like, hey man, you need to let me come over your house and crush you with Baseball Stars. He was like, yeah, nah, you don't want to do that. And so I just got at him for months. He's like, man, listen, I'm trying to tell you, you don't want to do that. And really what he was trying to do, he was trying to protect me from his dad. That he knew his dad was a racist. And so he's like, all right, Lyle, okay, man, if you keep on talking junk, I'm going to you come over to my house, I'm going to crush you behind the Baseball Stars. And then you had to go. I was like, all right, cool. And he did. He crushed me at Baseball Stars. But it was a moment. It was a moment that I went up the stairs. His dad came home. His mom was sweet as pie, y'all.
Yeah.
Sweet as pie. And when I'm coming down the stairs, and his dad is looking. She kind of tries to divert his attention, and sure enough, he catches me coming out, and I hear the phrase, "What's that N doing in my house?" Right? But again, it's the people, the moments, and the experiences, not of him, not of the dad, but the son and the mom. That was really what marked me. It's really what marked me. And it's like, those are the kind of people that I want to be around. Because years later, when they moved from that base, he actually, the first and only real conversation that he ever had, his father ever had with me, was him shaking my hand and saying, thanks for being a great friend of my son.
All the way back around?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It came back around. Now, of course, in that moment, I was like, oh, okay, cool. But I'm not realizing what is happening in
That's
this
his
moment.
form of an apology right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Man, I'm really interested in your story. You've lived in a ton of places overseas. You've just seen a lot of people, and it totally makes sense. How do you navigate moments of racism, moments of maybe injustice, or whatever that may be? How do you navigate those moments, but still be able to see the brighter side, or be able to know, let's just be honest, frankly, that walk with Jesus to know, like, hey, you can be forgiven in this moment. I can forgive you, even if you didn't know, right? I'm sure there's been moments where you do know. You just seem like a person to me right now that can look through that and say, hey, man, but you're loved. You're loved in this space.
That's a great question, man. And it really actually starts with my own story of being forgiven, my own story of being loved, and my own story of someone, kind of looking at me and saying, hey, you're not what you did. You're not that moment. You're not that behavior. You are someone or something significant, right? Yeah. The whole call on my life is to unearth the significance in the lives of other people. If I just drum down baseline, Lyle, what are you called to do in life? Wow. It all stems out of this idea that I'm called to unearth the significance in the lives of other people. We're all created in the imago Dei, the image of God, right? And even though there is a hate that is sown into the heart and the lives of a person, there is something to love. Me and Des were off camera talking about this idea that even a stopped clock is right twice a day. There is something to find. Right?
Wait. One more time. What now?
A stopped clock is right twice a day. Yeah, no bad reason. That clock is right at least twice a day. There is something significant to find in the heart and the lives of anyone if you're willing to do what it takes to allow yourself.
So my question is, then what does it take? Like a person. Yeah. So let's bring up, I'm life in the middle. I'm struggling with someone that's close to me, a parent, a father, a friend. Yeah. I'm continuing to struggle with that person. What does it take for me to, and me and Des, we've talked about on this podcast short sprints, the idea of not the long race, the long race, but short sprints. How would you say, how do you go about struggling with an individual, life in the middle with that individual, and getting to the other side of that?
First of all, it's not easy. We're not talking about three simple steps to to forgive your father, for beating the heck out of you when you was a kid, right? We're not talking about that. But in order to do that, there's got to be a determination on the inside first. It's not just going to happen externally, right? There's nothing externally that's going to happen to start to heal, right, the internal wounds that you're having with this conflict with this individual that you're in the middle of your stuff with, right? Yeah. There has to be a desire to be healed first. Because hurt people hurt people, right? Mm-hmm. Hurt people. If you're hurt, you will continue to hurt. Unless you get on the path towards healing, you have to make a decision right there and then. What I would say, it's actually a pre-decision. At some point, you're going to have to make a determination in yourself. You're not going to allow that person to have that much influence and authority over your life again. You got to it's got to be an internal decision. And that's how it started for me, right? In these moments when I started to see things, my dad, racist people, when I started to see them different, it started in me, right? I had to, again, like I'm saying, it's because I was forgiven. It was because somebody gave me another chance. I went back to that, right? And I said, okay, there is something in me that is redeemable. And so I have to accept that. I have to live in that. And then I made a determination. I am not going to allow these people to have that much authority in my life to change who I am and the trajectory of life, where I'm going to go, and how other people, the people that are closest to me, that know me the best, that love me the best, to change how those people are going to see me. So that's number one. It's got to be a determination on the inside of you. If you can't make that decision inside, then you're never going to change the way you see anyone else, especially if they're not, doing the things that you want or hitting you up the way you need. It's never going to happen. But after that, then you got to go on a real search. And you got to go on an honest search. And they can't dictate that. You have to dictate that, right? You're going to have to say, okay, I already know these negative things about these individuals. I know what's coming down. I actually want to determine to see something redeemable outside of these things. Yeah. And then once you start to see those redeemable things, you start to talk about them. If you're a Christian, you start to pray about them, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, that would definitely say that's something that's helpful. But now for our Christian viewers, put it in a biblical sense for us right now.
No doubt. The number one thing I'm doing is praying for them. Oh, I'm praying for them. Listen, I've never. I don't know.
So is that like step 2? You said
no.
Internal. I've got to choose. And be determined that this is my decision, a pre-decision. You've established that decision. So next step, a lot of people go, I don't like what's going on. I don't like myself. I don't like this. I don't want it anymore, but stay stuck. They stay stuck in I don't want it and I want to get out. But you clearly have gone, but what's my next thing? So you're saying is to pray for 100%. Them.
100%. You got to start praying for me, because here's my experience. I have never earnestly prayed for someone that God did not speak to me about or did not show me something in their life that I can go deeper in a prayer for. Never. And I've never come out of an earnest prayer session with the Lord on the behalf of someone that I don't like, that I got up from that prayer session thinking, man, I still can't stand that joke. It's never happened. It's never happened.
So what you're saying is Jesus was right when he said, pray for those who persecute you.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
And you know that by experience.
I know that by experience. Turning the other cheek isn't necessarily just letting somebody slap me.
Is there an example, within confidence, is there an example you can give of somebody where this is bad, I need to make a decision, I'm going to pray for them, and you could see something in them that was no longer disdain or hatred?
Yeah, and I'll give you one outside of my father, because that's kind of the one, you know, if you listen to this podcast, that's kind of painfully obvious. So there was this dude when I was in the military that I felt like he pretty much had it out for me. For whatever reason, he was hating. So I was an aircraft mechanic the first part of my career. Now, don't get it twisted if you're listening to this, because I do not have a mechanical bone in my body. Okay, listen, I can barely fix my own lunch. Okay, I cannot fix stuff. That's not my wife does not call me when stuff needs to get fixed in the house. No, she calls you too. Okay, she does not call me. But they got me as an aircraft mechanic, and I can tell that whole story if it comes up. And I'm terrible at it. I'm terrible at fixing airplanes. But the guys that are really good at fixing airplanes, they all get put in this program called the Flying Crew Chief program. Now, the dude that ran the Flying Crew Chief program, I played ball with him. Play ball with his son. I taught his son the crossover. And he was like, okay, all right, you guys, there's something in you. And, if I don't get that up out you, you're probably going to get kicked out of the Air Force. And so he brought me in. So there was this one guy that was hated on me, man. He put me on all the terrible jobs. He put me on all the trips that ain't nobody want to go on. He was just a straight up hater. Yeah. I initially thought he was a racist, but no, he just ain't like me. Right. And so, I'm really just starting out in my Christian journey. And I'm finding myself saying things that I don't want to say. I'm finding myself thinking things that I don't want to think about this guy. I even find myself moving physically in places that I don't want to move because this guy is going to be around the corner, or this guy's got this influence there. And I told my pastor was like, nah, listen, man, have you prayed for him? Dang it. Like, nah, man, I ain't praying for. Of course, I was actually pretty hostile. I'm like, I ain't praying for that dude. Yeah, because even though I was a young Christian, I knew what was gonna happen. I knew what was gonna go down if I started to pray for him. And all of a sudden, I did. I started to pray for him, and all of a sudden, my attitude towards him changed. And so, when he would say things like this and that, Lyle, I would ignore it. I would do what he wanted. And then I would thank him for it, and then go to other people and give him credit for what I learned and what developed in me. Yeah. I went to my own boss and I said, man, you know what? I wouldn't be this and that if it wasn't for him. Wow. And all of a sudden, man, this guy was like, hold on. What's going on here? Yeah. And so then, one moment here, he would help me. And another moment here, while he's taking the jab at me, he would come around the corner and say, hey, but you know what? You could do this to be better. And then the whole thing. And then he was like, hey, listen, we got a trip. I want Tard to go with me. And I hated being called by my last name. I hate it so much. But he was like, I want Tard to come with me. I'm like, And then, so when I got on the flight with him, I was like, hey, listen, I'm following everything you do. I'm writing everything down. I want to learn from him. He's actually, no. He's like, no, what? No. Here, the reason why I got you on this trip is because there are some things that you are suited for that I want to put you, I'm going to give you some experience with.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, God changed that whole thing around, not by doing anything to him. God did everything in me. And then I started to see him differently. I started to treat him differently. And I think it's the fact that the power of the negativity that was affecting me, they could see it and they fed off of it. But when they could see that it couldn't affect me no more, and there was a different authority that was in my life to be able to serve and love and connect with that individual, changed the game.
Wow. Okay, so you are. I'm gonna kind of take a little left turn here. You are in DC now. You've been all over the world as a childhood. You said you're married, right?
I am.
Have any children?
Yeah, 2 kids. My 20th anniversary is in a few weeks.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what are you doing in DC now?
You came out of the military.
out of the Air
give
Force.
us that next
So,
chapter.
what is that?
So I wanted to continue my leadership company, Impact Serving Leadership. I wanted to retire out of the military, do that. The Lord told me, nah, head your little hind parts back over to DC. I was like, yeah, thanks, Jesus. Because, I didn't want to be there first. Now, my mother lives in Annapolis, Maryland, which is 45 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. I love my mom. She's dope. But I have a lot of negative memories from that arena of my life.
Sure.
So it's like, I don't want to do that. My wife definitely didn't want to do that. And so we went back to our church that was there in Washington, D.C., National Community Church, because, we just wanted to see some things we had sown into, some vision. We went back there, and the Lord spoke to us like really hard, like, yo, you need to come back. I was like, dang it. And let me just sidebar right there and say, so many people that I talk to, they think that the Lord wants to tell, they think that the Lord is always going to tell them the thing that they want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. I just don't see a whole bunch of that in the scriptures.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't. I don't see a bunch of that stuff in the scriptures.
Yeah.
And I don't have that testimony in my own life. He said, no, go ye therefore back to DC. I was like, dang it. And so I was like, all right, God, we going back to DC. My wife resonated with it. And so we were like, okay, well, we ain't got nothing going on. We ain't got nothing to do. I called my mom. She was like, oh, yeah, you definitely bring my grandkids over to the house.
Right.
And so I retired from the military, went to my mother's house, living in her basement for a couple months, and I just go do what I do, right? I just go do what I do, which is find a place to serve. I never remember. I need to go look it up and like tattoo it on me somewhere. I think it's either Luke 13 or 14, the portion of the scripture where they have a wedding feast. And my guy's like, listen, do not sit at the front of the table, because the bridegroom comes, tell you that you ain't got it, and you got to go to the end of the table. You embarrassed. You might as well be at the end of the table, sit down there and chill, so that when the bridegroom sees you, he's like, oh, man, Dez and Zeke, man, what y'all doing over here? Man, y'all get up to the front, man. Come on now, right? And I was like, yes, that's exactly how I need to live my life. And the Lord said to me, be all that you are at the end of the table. And so the end of the table looks like me finding the place where there's a gap or that nobody's doing anything, and go do that there. And so I went to my church. I went back to my church. Went back to it. Hey, listen, y'all. What y'all got going on? What's the next event coming up? What's the next big rock that needs to get? Hey, I'm in it to win it. What we got to do?
Okay.
I just know I'm gonna show up. And as I'm showing up every weekend, they're like, somebody came to me like, oh man, they got this one position that's open at the church. I'm like, man, I ain't looking for no job.
Yeah. I
got one. I'm gonna run my leadership company here. I'm like, oh, stop that. They're like, no, you really need to check this thing out. I'm like, okay. I looked at it. I was like, dang, man. When I was a volunteer here 2 years ago, this job is everything I was doing as a volunteer. I'm like, they gonna pay me to do what I want to do for free. I'm into that. And so now I looked at the qualifications. All of the qualifications. Yeah, your boy ain't got none of those qualifications.
Yeah.
None of those qualifications. I have no ministry degree. I went to nobody's seminary. I ain't got none of them things. But this particular role, needed a lot of that type of stuff. But the girl was like, listen, I got you. You just give me a bunch of information. I'll help you write your resume and we'll submit it because literally this job is made for you. I'm like, all right, cool. But I'm thinking I'm supposed to be obedient to the Lord. So sidebar, what happens is I'm on a writing retreat with my boy. And I'm in the middle. I've never had writer's block a day in my life, ever. Until I get on this writing retreat. And like the first 2 days, I can't write nothing. And my wife eventually says, you need to write a resume. That's what you need to do. And I'm like, and so yeah, according to the Holy Spirit and the voice of my wife, I wrote a resume. They call me back, long story, really short. They call me back. They're like, hey, bro, so listen, that job that we wanted you, that you applied for, we're going to actually shift it, man. We're going to shift it to a campus pastor role. Would you like to still be considered for that? I'm like, do I have to write a different resume? They're like, no. I said, what the heck, God? Like, I don't want to do that ever again. Yeah. So it was not a pastoral position, y'all. They did not. They were not offering a pastoral position initially. They changed it in the middle of the hiring process and hired me as a pastor.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
Wow.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah.
So so now you are currently still a campus pastor at this church?
No. So okay. So that's a funny story too, because I got hired in the end of February of 2020.
Okay.
The pandemic hit 3 weeks later.
Okay.
So I was a campus pastor for 3 whole beautiful weeks, and then the whole thing shut down. Yeah, and then
the whole campus shut down.
The whole church shut down. All 8 of our locations shut down. And then we eventually
for 19 months.
Yeah,
they were shut down.
19 months we were shut down.
5 months Arizona, 19.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, we were shut down for 19 months in between.
You
then.
live so in a bubble sometimes, you know, in the state that you live. I mean, this place was, 19 months.
Yeah, 19
so the whole
months.
church was done.
The whole church was shut down.
Have they reopened it all?
Oh yeah. I mean, we were doing online services. We ended up having a booming online footprint. You know, something like 2,500 to 3,000 people a weekend online. It was ridiculous how just in the how in the pandemic it blew up. But in that time also, they were already dreaming about what it might look like to downsize our campuses, because our lead pastor had this idea, this heart of it's not about the church, the name of the church door, it's about the name above all names. And how do we have more things without our name on it? How do we have more inroads to things that don't have our name on it? And so 8 campuses in the D.C. metropolitan area, there's a lot of stuff with National Community Church's name on it. Let's go ahead and get some people. Let's go ahead and get some of these pastors that are campus pastors. Let's launch them into their dream. Some of them wanted to be lead pastors. There's some people within the church that want to be lead pastors. Let's see if this might be an opportunity. So the first thing we did was took some of those communities. We asked all of the campus pastors, hey, y'all want to be a lead pastor? They asked me, man, a month in, do you want to be a lead pastor? I'm like, yo, bro, I just got this job, man.
Not ready for that,
You know, man, like, nobody want to be nobody's lead pastor. That's Pastor Dez. You know, like, no. And so then we asked people within the community that we trusted, we knew had leadership acumen. Hey, do you want? And so a couple of people took us up on the opportunity. So some of those campuses, some of those communities actually got launched as churches out of the pandemic. And then the rest of us kind of consolidated. And now we are 2 locations in Washington, D.C. And I'm an associate pastor at our main location in the middle of D.C.
Wow. All of just, I mean, yeah. I'm trying to soak all of this in. A guy who's lived life all across the world, has not just a hometown's perspective, but a nationwide, global lease perspective. Yeah. Military, sports, and all of that leads you back to being a pastor. And would you even say that you're the happiest now, probably, that you...
Nah.
No. There's more to the story. Come on, brother.
There's more to this now.
Our listeners need to know that some of you are focused on a destination right now, and that's not your destination.
Okay.
So you're in the middle, and you think this is what the shoreline is. Yeah. And you go there, but it isn't. There's something rooted. And I know for Lyle, his story...
Okay, so now
still moving.
Where are we at then now? Yeah, why, this isn't the happiest...
No, definitely not. And I tell you, because I mean, first of all, I mean, when you live lives of transition. We all live lives of transition, but we transition in very different ways. My entire life has been one massive transition after the other, and so my 20th anniversary is coming up, but year 15 was the worst year in my marriage, right? And that's the same year that I'm about to transition out of the military, right? And so now the marriage is picking up, and vocationally, right? I'm in this space because like being a pastor, right, is a beautiful call of the Lord, right? My lead pastor says like this: we're all interim pastors.
Yeah,
we're all interim pastors, and we're all executive pastors to the real lead pastor, who is Jesus, right? That's what we have to think about our lives. And so this is a stop on the road to where God has called me to go. My wife has a lot of wounds when it comes to being in the church, especially because her parents were pastors, and so she had a lot of preacher's child scars and wounds, and so that was a tumultuous situation for her being in that space. And so it's like, okay, what's the next step? What's the next iteration of life? You know, and of course, like I said before, my dad was a minister, right? Yeah. And so, you know, being in this role is truly submission to Jesus, because it's not something I wanted, because I get triggered a lot to where my dad was, who my dad was. I'm always struggling with being the same in person and in private. Always struggling with that. I've got a temper, like my dad did. Yeah. And so I've got to manage to control. So I need therapists, I need counseling, I need Jesus, right? You know what I'm saying? Just to keep that, because again, I want to be the best version of who God has called me to be. And so being a pastor was really just me submitting to the Lord, right? And finding joy. One of my boys, man, said something that was really significant. Probably in the middle of this 4.5 years that I've been a pastor at National Community Church. He said, he said when he was before he was diagnosed with cancer, he enjoyed food, right, and found life in his enjoyment of food. When he got a cancer diagnosis and his son challenged him to lose weight, he said, I live for life, and I find joy in that. Right. And so right now I'm in a space, right, where I'm living life the way God is calling me, and I'm finding joy in where He has. But so when you say am I my happiest? No, I'm not my happiest. But man, the joy of the Lord, I have never experienced it as my physical strength more than in this season.
Present.
Yeah, and so so because of that, it's like, okay, God, what is next? What's the next step? As I was thinking about kind of doing this podcast, I thought about Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt, set the world record. I don't know, back in like 20 whatever. Yeah, whatever. 20. I think it was 2009.
Beijing Olympics. Was it?
I thought it was 2009.
No, before that.
Yeah. No, that went before that.
Way before that. Maybe 04.
Yeah, I was in high school. I was in high school.
The Olympics 04, 08,
Sorry,
2012.
I just gave all of that up. Thank you, Jesus. All right.
So when he set the world record in 100 meters, right, he did not start faster than any person.
Nope.
And although his time was faster than everyone, he did not lean in and finish the race faster than any person. Usain Bolt ran the middle steps faster than anyone has ever ran the middle steps in life. The middle steps is what run the race and set the world record for Usain Bolt. And so it's been about, okay, God, how do I maximize the middle steps? How do I not just look at the finish line, but how do I do the very best I am right now in the middle of my race?
Yep.
Right?
Oh man.
And so because of that, I could. The circumstances don't allow this to be the happiest part of my life, but also just a philosophy of like, okay, God, I'm 44 years old. I'm not done. So I'm not looking to try to be my happiest now. I'm trying to be my best right now, Yeah. And regardless of how I feel about life, this is about, hey, how am I going to maximize every step, every opportunity, and every moment? And so it's been a challenge to do that. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm about to take a step actually out of this position, out of this role as a pastor. at National Community Church. And many people would say, oh, snap, dude, I mean, for those of you guys who know, Mark Batterson is the one that runs National Community Church. You know, multiple New York Times bestselling Christian author, phenomenal cat, man. He's the most generous leader I've ever met in my life. And I got 4-star generals on my phone that I can call today.
Yeah.
Okay. He's the most generous leader I've ever met in my life, man. He's fantastic. And I have had people like in the Assemblies of God spaces. I'm not Assemblies of God, but I mean, he's in the Assemblies of God. Pastor, people tell me like, oh, snap, you work with Mark Batterson? Yeah. Yo, you've reached it, man. You're doing it, man. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I guess I get it from your perspective, but I don't serve at the glory at the feet of Mark Batterson. Right. Matter of fact, God didn't even call me to Mark Batterson. He called me to the executive pastor, Joe Schmigall. That's really where my heart is connected to. My heart is connected to the Lord and what God said to me about Joel Schmigall, his second in command. And so I'm not even there for any of that. And so I'm there for what God said for me to do, for the time that God said for me to do. And now He's calling me out. It's like an Acts 8 moment. You know what I'm saying? When the revival was happening in Samaria, revival was breaking out, man. God sent Philip to Samaria. Hey, listen, go hook these guys up. And he hooks them up. Okay. He hooks them up. And then in the middle of that, in the middle of this revival, God says, Philip, go to this road down south on this desert road.
Let me ask you a tough question.
Okay.
This is me, that's kind of my little role here.
Yeah.
In a life of transition, in a life of, again, I go back to just all the places that you've been and seen.
Yep.
How do you know for certain it's God's call for you to leave that place versus you just doing what you know, transitioning out?
Yeah, that's a great
question.
That's it. And I don't mean to be mean.
No.
But I want to be clear.
That's going to be helpful.
I want to be clear to the people around us. What is the moment that you know? Because I will say this, and maybe this is another episode for us.
Sure.
But I, in Scripture, believe God doesn't care where we work.
I agree.
God doesn't care what our profession is. If that was the case, He would have went after different people than the people that He went
100%.
after, right? In that, you get a lot of God called me to this. God called me to this new church. God called me to that. I had to leave, and a lot of that can be. I'm just disgruntled with this place, or it's not my cup of tea. My first world problems aren't being met at this church.
Those people take me off.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you know that it's not just what you're used to transition?
Yep.
Versus God is calling me out of this place.
That's a great question. And this
Sorry, don't take that.
No. This is probably the most important part of the podcast, to be honest. Yeah, that's a great question. I know that this is what the Lord wants. First of all, because I literally committed to fasting and praying. And fasting. I have a podcast called The Lost Art of Fasting. You can go out there. I've done 3 or 4 40-day fasts in my life. And I'm trying to tell you.
Just for the listeners.
Yeah.
40 days, water only.
Water only?
Fasts.
Yeah.
And I know this transition story, he's been sharing it with me. It's like, it's a long version. He's going to give the Cliff Notes version. So
yeah, definitely.
But yeah.
Okay.
Carry on.
So I went into several seasons of fasting and praying, right? Wrestling with all of the things that I'm pissed off about when it comes to my life and my role and all those things. And I said, okay, God, these are all the things that I'm upset about. This is what I feel like I'm hearing from you, right? This is what I'm mad about. This is the dream that I also have. And I started to be very sober-minded about it, right? Number 1, I was sober-minded about all of that stuff. Number 2, there is wisdom in the multitude of counsel. The second thing I did was I submitted it before trusted men and women of God and said, this is what I sense from the Lord. This is what I have a personal challenge and issue with in my life. And these are the things that are coming up in my life as far as the dreams of God that I have. This is what I want to do. Give me counsel on what I need to do. And then on top of all of that, man, Z, there's a bunch of things that started to happen in my life from September of 2023 until today that just could not be explained, bro.
Yeah.
And God told me to write. One of the things he told me to do that I knew was God and wasn't me, he told me to start writing it down. I am not a journaler. And here's the thing. Mark Batterson is a fanatic journaler, okay? He teaches this stuff, okay? Listen, you might be a blasphemer if you don't journal. Pastor Mark says, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's just how he is.
Pastor Des
You know what I mean?
He's not like that. I
Pastor
write
Des
down
journal,
notes, but I don't journal.
Yeah, he doesn't journal.
He
I'm
is
not
all
qualified.
about you're in Pastor Mark's mind, and I slightly do agree with this. You're not really ready to learn, and you're not really ready to grow as a leader if you don't have a pen and a pad next to you.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm definitely down with that.
Yeah.
But I'm not a journalist. And so when God told me to start writing everything down, I knew that wasn't me because I definitely wouldn't do that. That's not my jam.
Yeah.
Right? Write everything down because then he started to show me. He started to show me things in scripture. He started to show me then other people started to say stuff that just wasn't no possible way that these people could know what was going on in my heart and my life unless it was from the Lord. There's no way. So a mix of going into a season of just denying my flesh, right? Yeah. Because what fasting is, just a sidebar on fasting. Fasting is circumcision of the heart through denial of the flesh. That's what fasting is.
One more time. Say that one more time.
Fasting is circumcision of the heart through denial of the flesh.
Okay.
If you want to have the ends of your heart that are deceitful above all things cut off of you, go on a fast. Go on a fast. Because God will shave the stuff that's you off of you through a fast and show you himself, right?
And so you entered into a season of discerning about this future.
Yep.
And back to the beginning, you had people and moments and experiences that directed you in this direction. You combined all of that.
Yep. And there was moments that I was ready to say, nope. Because I was telling Des, like, hey, my wife at one point was like, yeah, I'm not down with it. And I was like, okay, cool, full stop. We're not doing it then. It's that simple. We're not doing it. I know that I heard from God. It wasn't like, man, I wonder if God said, no, I know I heard from God. Right? And so my prayer wasn't, God, change my wife. Change my wife's mind. God, say what you said to me to her. That was not my prayer. I said, God, make me faithful. Now, I know on this podcast it's going to sound like I'm like super duper Christian. I'm not. Listen, I'm trying to tell you I'm not, okay? I am not, all right? I got issues, problems, and situations, you know what I'm saying? But in this moment, the prayer was, God, make me faithful to you and to her. God, I don't know how you're going to do that. I need you because I'm not moving forward unless I'm with her.
I hope, just to pause real quick, I hope our listeners can resonate with that when Des was even talking about his move from England to here. It's a lot of that story where it was Des alone and his wife was a no. So I'm not going to tell Des' story, but I'm resonating with that because of Des' story about moving here. But keep going. Okay, go ahead.
And so there was a lot of moments in this. It wasn't just about Lyle wants to do what Lyle wants to do. Yeah. Or Lyle's used to doing these kind of things, so it's just going to be what Lyle does. No. I had to realize, first of all, 15 years ago when the Lord declared that we are trailblazers. Now think about it. When's the last time you went to the construction worker on the side of the road that's fixing the road and said, hey, man, really appreciate you, man, for what you're doing? No one does that. Right? Right? No one does that. Right? Those are the thankless moments, the thankless jobs that make life happen for so many other people. God says that that's the kind of life that my wife and I are called to. Right? And so we're going to be blazing trails in places where trails are not blazed. Right? I'm going to tell y'all, National Community Church is dope. Mark Batterson doing his thing, right? Yeah. Helping millions of people all across the world. But there are some trails that have been blazed in that space, and there are other places that God needs trails to be blazed. Right? That's how I know that I'm called to this life of mobility. I know that I'm called to this life of transition, right? And so, but it's like, okay, God, when and where and what? That's all in your hands. And so I'm faithful in the moment that God has me, where he has me, until he says, all right, son, get him. Here's the other thing to this. That I know that is significant. Many people, if not most people, want to be comfortable in one place, in one situation, doing one thing for the rest of their life. Most people want that. Most people see the security in that. They see the comfort in that. They just can't imagine moving out of their neighborhood, out of their cul-de-sac, off of that job, being with these kind of groups of people. There are little chemicals released in our body that make us feel good, that tell us physically and mentally that this is right.
Yeah.
Right? God needs people who are willing to buck against that stuff and go where he's called them. Because listen, you and I both know, hey, if you don't do it, God gonna get somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
He doesn't need me.
Yeah.
He doesn't need you, right? He's gonna get someone to go. If he's gonna make donkeys cry out, and if rocks gonna talk, if we don't, then sure enough, he gonna get a human, right, to do what it is. And so, because I'm a willing vessel in that area, I know that God's gonna move. I know that God's gonna be faithful. Because you're right, it is not. He does not care about your vocation. Don't. He do not care about your vocation. Are you faithful in being who you're supposed to be while you're doing whatever it is that you're doing?
And can I just say, at the moment, as recording this, when it goes out at the end of April, it's time to step out of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You've made that initial first step.
Yeah.
But you don't know where the next.
No.
You've made the
idea.
decision, and there is no next. There is no net. There is no. And so then again, for some of you listening to this, you're in a moment of, I know I'm not meant to be here.
Yeah.
But I'm drawn to something else. Lyle is gone, we're going to move. We're going to take a step. Not a geographical move. We're going to step away from what we are in now. And then you're in a posture to receive what's
And
next.
I would just say, to double back on, when you're, like Des said, when you're in a place where you know you need to take that step, let's look at some of the things that Des and Lyle went through to make sure that was the correct, right fasting, being in the Word. It's not just I know I need to go and now it's done and it's over. That Lyle didn't make this decision one day and now it's over. It is a continual discussion with the Lord. You know what I mean? In a discussion of fasting, something to make sure that he's focused, and the same for you, Des. So just be careful in these switches of churches or jobs, and don't make it first world. Make it something that is of Jesus, because I do believe Jesus can call us to the trailblaze, a different season of life, to a different place.
Yeah.
But I just, I don't want to blur those lines.
Yeah.
Man,
and I want to say real quick, wisdom, use wisdom, please. I mean, everybody ain't got to do what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if God's calling you to move, it don't mean that you got to go in this space where you ain't got no job, you ain't got no money. Man, take care of your family. Well, don't be crazy. Because I'm going to go get a job at McDonald's if I have to.
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
I'm already determined to do that, because it isn't about what I do. It's about who I am doing whatever it is God called me to do.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a great
That is beautiful. Man, Lyle, it's been fantastic to meet you, man.
And it's just a blessing. Like, Lyle's here for 24 hours.
Man.
And we thought, I need to capture this.
I'm really excited for this episode to come out. Your life is interesting. I kind of hope you come back for season 3, or you know what I mean, just to see where you're at. Where did God kind of leave you?
Yeah.
All right, we always kind of are ending these episodes on a little bit of an up trail. I need to know your 3 favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
Or 3 of your favorite movies, if you have 10.
Let me start with Des, his 3 favorite.
Okay.
Then I'll start with mine first.
Okay.
Then we'll go to Des, and then we'll end with you. So mine were Purple Rain, Rush Hour, and Batman, in no particular order. Dez's were
Gladiator.
Goodness gracious.
Dead Poet Society.
Wow.
Saving Private Ryan.
Okay. Starting from number 3.
Wow. Oh, number 3. Number 3 is Friday.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord.
Friday.
Here we go.
Friday,
You don't even know what that is. You don't even know what that is.
I have no frame of
Man.
reference.
Okay, number 2. Let's
Friday,
move on.
baby.
Number 2.
Number 2 is The Matrix.
Wait. Friday. The first one? The second
Yeah, the
one?
first one gotta be. Yeah, gotta be. Gotta be the first one.
The second one. I love this. The second one. Second movie. Here we go.
The Matrix.
Seen it.
Yeah, the first one.
I can get down with that
Yeah,
one.
the first Matrix.
I will tell you that
A few of them are
that
garbage, but
whole
that one
just
was good.
idea in
The
that
whole
time
concept, the whole Neo thing was
yeah, that was
really...
fantastic.
When I was a youth pastor, man, I wrote the Matrix sermons. I'm just saying.
Was it the 90s?
Yes.
Was that the 90s?
Yeah, it's the 90s. Yep.
Okay, number one.
99, actually. Yep.
Number
Number
one.
one is Avengers Endgame.
Gotta respect
Avengers
it.
Yep.
Endgame.
The top grossing movie of all
All
time.
time.
It beat
All of the time.
It beat,
Titanic?
No,
Yeah.
not Titanic. It beat the blue, the
Avatar.
Avatar.
Yep.
Avatar was the top because that was another one.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great having
Yeah,
you,
man,
Lyle.
it's been
It's been
dope.
great to meet you.
Yes, sir.
I hope this story is impactful for people and you
Yeah,
know
me too.
life
Yeah.
through the middle of,
Yeah.
of transition.
Yeah.
It's just
It's a
been
great
So,
podcast.
And can I just nail this?
yeah,
People, moments, experiences.
yeah,
The reason Lyle sat in this chair is because I needed to choose a moment, but the people and the experiences were encountered with Lyle. So the
Yeah.
reason he's here is you put yourself in an environment open to experience new people, new moments, new
Yeah.
experiences.
Mm.
And you're all blessed because of it.
that's awesome. Well, we will see y'all next week. Thank you so
Wednesday.
much. Thank you, Lyle.
Hey, of
Thanks,
course,
brother.
brother.
We'll see you later.
Later, guys.
Later.
Holla.